Okay, today we are going to be learning about if there are people, let's say men, there are 8 men, not 10. So the question is, does everyone read the Megillah themselves? Or does one person read the Megillah for everyone else? That is going to be the question that we're going to be dealing with in the beginning of today's session. Shulchan Aruch writes, in Sifrei, Makom she'ein minyan. Im echad yodaya v'hacherim ina yodim echad poiser es kulam. In a place where there's no minyan, you don't have 10 men. If there is not one person, if there is one person who knows how to read the Megillah properly, and the others don't, certainly the person who knows how to read the Megillah would read for them. However, if everyone knows how to read the Megillah, according to the Shulchan Aruch, everyone should read the Megillah themselves. The obvious question is, why is a minyan needed for a Megillah? Is Megillah a davar shebekdusha? We know a davar shebekdusha has to be minimally 10 people, something that is holy, aka Kaddish Kedusha Baruch Hu. We know from Siman Hates, Gemaras, etc. But why does Megillah have to have 10 men? The Magen Avraham has a beautiful commentary on this subject, and he writes, "Ma'ashma desfirle, the Eina Yachid Motzei Chaveiro El Basar." It's implied, says the Magen Avraham, that the Shulchan Aruch holds that an individual does not have the halachic ability to fulfill the obligation for his friend unless there is a quorum of men there. 10 men, a minyan. Says the Magen Avraham, one needs to say that this is incomparable to shofar, which is discussed in Simin Tovkov Sali Dalid. The kriyas Megillah havi kemoi tefila dabaya sara. Because the reading of the Megillah is similar to shemoneh esray, which requires 10. Chazeres hashatz, when the shemoneh esray is repeated, there need to be 10 men. The obvious question is, why would Megillah be similar to shemoneh esray? How would it be similar to shemoneh esray? The Magen Avraham continues and writes, Aval b'Rabbeinu Yerucham Nesiv Yud Gimel Mashma Dafilu Yachid Motzei Chaveiro b'Megillah Afal Pishu Baki. However, from the Rabbeinu Yerucham, it's implied that even an individual could fulfill the obligation of his friend in Megillah, even if his friend is an expert. So we have a fabulous argument over here. If you need 10 to fulfill the obligation of your friend or not. V'chein kosev Avudram, v'chein kosev Abachla, Avudram writes this, the Bach, by his Chodesh Rabbiel, Circus, so Simin Tafrei Shadi, B'pshitus B'shem Maharil, he quotes the Maharil, other words known as Avi Ashkenaz, the father of Ashkenazic customs. V'im Kain, and if that's so, if you don't need a minyan to read the Megillah and fulfill the obligation of your friend, it's better that one person should read the Megillah. Everyone else should fulfill their obligation by listening to that one person, because the majority of the nation gives splendor after the king. When more people are involved with one mitzvah, it's halachically better than if everyone is doing the mitzvah individually. The Tashbetz writes that everyone should read the Megillah themselves if they want. So this is the machlokes in the Magen Avraham, who isn't clearly ruling how he holds over here. There's no definitive psak of, at the end of the day, what does the Magen Avraham hold over here? He does not say it. Seems to quote two ideas. First, starting off with the idea that you need 10, not like shofar, and then saying that no, you don't. Any questions on this Magen Avraham?
No.
In that case, we will now begin the Mishna Berura. Mishna Berura says, right over here, the ein hayachid motzei is chaver al basar. An individual cannot fulfill the obligation of his friend unless there are 10 people. V'loi dami l'shofar. As we just saw in the Magen Avraham moments ago, this is incomparable to shofar. The kriyas Megillah havi k'moi tefila the ba'inon asara dafka. Because for some reason, reading the Megillah is similar, is akin to tefila, to shemoneh esray, which 10 are required for the repetition for Chazar Sashatz. V'hine hapri chodesh kosav the kol zehu rak linyan l'chachilo. The Pri Chodesh writes, this is only talking about what's the preferable halacha. The Chatchila. However, Aval B'di'evid, Im Neskavin Lifter Chaveru Yotzu Afal Pi Shekulam Yoidim. But post facto, after the case, the person that intended to exempt his friend, everyone would fulfill their obligation. Even though that they all know how to read the Megillah. So according to the Pri Chodesh, it certainly works b'di'evid. Magen Avraham etzadei od afilu lechatchila odev sheyikro echad lekulam mishum rova majes melch. Magen Avraham decides to say that even lechatchila, preferably, it's better that one person reads for everyone else because berova majes melch, more people involved with one mitzvah as a group get splender to the king. So it seems like the Mishna Berura is learning that the Magen Avraham holds that one person could and should read the Megillah for everyone else, even if it's less than 10. However, the Mishna Berura paskins, which is the highlighted section over here, Omnam means however, but means that I'm paskining. This is how I rule. The Eliya Raba b'mata Yehuda daisem ki Shulchan Aruch the kol echad yikra la'atzmo. But the Magen Avraham, but the Eliya Raba and the Mata Yehuda hold like the Shulchan Aruch, who says that everyone should read the Megillah by oneself. The obvious question that would be unanswered by 98% of people who learn this Mishna Berura is why? Why is it that 10 people are required for Megillah, for one person to fulfill the obligation of others? So for those who dug a little bit deeper and didn't just learn the Mishna Berura, but learned the Shulchan Aruch with the Nosei Kelim, the commentaries, so then they learned the Magen Avraham that we just saw. The Magen Avraham that we just saw says that it's implied from the Shulchan Aruch that you need 10. And then in the continuation of the Magen Avraham, it's similar to shemoneh esray, that you need 10. And the truth is, the Mishna Berura quotes this. Megillah is similar to shemoneh esray, that you need 10. The obvious question is, how on earth is Megillah similar to shemoneh esray, that you need 10? Megillah, there's absolutely nothing to lose. Even if one person is reading the Megillah for himself, he still recites all of the brachas before the laning of the Megillah, before the Megillah reading. This isn't a davar shebikdusha. Why on earth is 10 needed?
Isn't it based on a Gemara?
Yeah, what does the Gemara say?
Oh, it's a machlokas, I think, of Rav, and I forgot who else.
Yeah.
And at first, I think Rav said you didn't need 10, and then at the end, he paskin, like the other man said that you need 10. I forgot. I think it's Gemara Megillah somewhere. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Megillah somewhere. Yeah. Well, why?
What?
But why?
Oh, okay. I forgot the reason why. But
in the shivas, you're not taught to ask why. You're taught to ask how. What's pshat? There aren't so many why questions. You say like, what's the source? Like whatever. What's the depth behind it? I'm a big fan of the why. I don't just take things for granted. Why do we wear costumes on Purim? Why do we eat hamantashen as we learned in the past? Why is hamantashen 3 times? Why do we eat jelly donuts on Hanukkah? I'm a big fan of the whys. Why? And the truth is, other people are also interested. I could tell by the results. Take a look over here at the Oz V'Hadar Mishna Berura. Why do you need 10? When we're talking about 10 people, you're like a messenger of the congregation, a chazan, and you can fulfill the obligations of other people when they listen to the Megillah reading. Incomparable to shofar, one person can fulfill the obligation of other. Megillah is similar to tefila. Magen Avraham says that no, one person would read for others, even if it's less than 10, over Majus Melech. Since an individual himself could fulfill his obligation by reading, and it does not have the status of tefillah, on the contrary, better for them all to fulfill their obligation for one person, just like if there's 10, so too if there's not. So we see somehow Megillah is tied into shemoneh esray. Mishna Berura Shab, Mishna Berura over there, Tuf Kuf Sadi Dalid. I think that this is going on. No, this is, I made a mistake. Ayin Vav is going on. Yeah, I was right. Tuf Kuf Sadi Dalid. Okay, so this is a topic that comes up in another place as well. Take a look over there in Siman Kuf Chav Dalid. That's the halachas of Chazar Zashatz. Anyhow, so the Mishna Berura over there says, "Eina yochid motzei chavero betvila." An individual cannot fulfill the obligation of his friend with shemoneh esray mishum shebetvila sora kol echad lavakesh rachamim al atzmo v'lo yedei shliach sibur. That when it comes to shemoneh esray, everyone needs to beseech, request mercy on himself, and it cannot be done through a chazan, through a messenger. Unless there are 10 people, and then it works. The source of this, the reasoning behind this, is from a Ran in Maseches Rosh Hashanah and Yud Aleph. Amid Beis in Dibur Maskul Yochid Shekasabi Shem Yerushalmi. The Ran quotes the Yerushalmi. Shebirchas Hamazon v'Kriya Shema v'Tfilo ein Adam Yotzei Mechavero. When it comes to benching the recitation of Shema and shemoneh esray, person cannot fulfill his obligation from his friend. Ayin Sham Shehevi Tam Kol Echad. Look over there, he brings a reason for each one. We actually do hold that someone could fulfill his obligation by listening to benching someone else, but he has to be careful. Listen to the whole time. Shema is a whole discussion of itself. Siman Samach Gimel around that area comes up in the pesukim. V'taima, and the reason is the tefila mishum shemistaber. When it comes to shemoneh esray, it's logical to say that it should be kol echad mevakesh rachmim al atzmo, that every single person has to request mercy for himself, daven for himself. V'siyam haran, the Ran concludes shekol zeh kishiyodei lavodech. Says the Ran, this is talking about that you know how to make the bracha yourself. Aval kisheini yodei lavodech. However, if you don't know how to make the bracha yourself, chaveroi motzio k'moshe amnu echad soifer ve'echad bor soifer mavarech ubor yotzei. If your friend does not know how to make the bracha himself, you could recite the bracha for him. Like the Gemara in Bracha says on Mem Hey, if one person is an expert and one person doesn't know how to do it, the expert could recite the bracha, and the non-expert could fulfill his obligation from the expert. But this halacha is actually subject to an argument. According to the Ritz Gayus, as well as Rav Shri Ragon, an individual could only recite the bracha and fulfill the obligation of his friend, specifically by benching and a bracha on a mitzvah. Masha'inkin, conversely, betfila shloi niskun ela balachash. Conversely, shemoneh esray, which was only enacted to be said silently. Take a look in Siman Kuf, Tuf Kuf, Sadi Dalavachim, Posuk, the Mishna Berura Sham. The Mishna Berura rules that way as well as in the halachas of Chazar Zashatz and Siman Kuf Kov Dalwitz of Kotan Alish, Av im Hashaimeya. Ein Yochol lehispalel ba'atzmoi kigoyin sheino baki ein hayachid motzei. For example, even if the listener isn't able to daven by himself, for example, if he's not an expert, an individual cannot fulfill his obligation. Seemingly the two reasons that are brought over there. They are not applicable to Kriyas Megillah at all. Seemingly. Because they're not a request for mercy. And similarly, it wasn't enacted to say it silently. And you need to look into this more. In other words, this is a very interesting topic and requires some research. It's a very interesting discussion. But at the end of the day, the Mishna Berura clearly holds that if it's less than 10 people and everyone knows how to read the Megillah, everyone should read it on their own. That's the ruling of the Mishna Berura. Comes along the Piskei Teshuvos, and he said, "Esver hadavar ki Megillah hi b'makom hallel." New insight from the Chachmas Shelomo on the page of the Shulchan Aruch, by the way. Chachmas Shelomo, he has a whole shtickle down over here. Where is that? Where was that? Chachmas Shelomo, I saw it the other day. You had a whole piece. You had a whole long piece. Someone over here. I don't know why I can't find it now. It's on the side. It's on Sifei. Yeah, right over here. Here it is. This whole piece of this Chachmas Shelomo. So he's going to summarize one point from this piece. Yeah? Rabbi Shlomo Kluger says that Megillah is instead of hallel.
That's a Gemara also.
Yeah, that's right. He quotes the Gemara and Megillah on your Dalit, but watch what he's going to do with it. Right? You should just point out that the Gemara over there provides several reasons as to why we don't say hallel and Megillah. One of the hallel on Purim, excuse me. One of the reasons is Megillah is instead of hallel. Mishum sheyesh ba psuki shevach v'hodar, as pesukim that have to do with praising and thanking Hashem. Ubahalo kaimalon. And when it comes to hallel, we hold, as we learned when we learned Siman Tov Chav Beis, shehi kitvilo shesorach asara kadei lohoitzi es habakim. It would be similar to shemoneh esray, in which 10 people would be needed in order for one person to say hallel, the whole thing out loud, and to fulfill the obligation of someone else who's an expert who is listening. The tefila irachamihi, because shemoneh esray is mercy. V'sara kol echad lavakesh rachmim al atzmo v'lo yadei shliach. And everyone needs to request mercy on himself and not through a messenger. Eliim kein yesh asara, unless there are 10 people. Ve'az shlicho hu shliach sibur. And then the messenger would be the messenger of the congregation. It will be good. You need 10. You could request mercy on others' behalf. Even though we find some who argue on this halacha regarding the reading of the Megillah, Magen Avraham, like the Mishna Berura quoted the Magen Avraham, who said Beor Halacha. That's what he quotes in parentheses. The Magen Avraham, aka the Rabbeinu Yerucham, the Mahariel, the Avudram, and the Bach, aka who said Beor Halacha, who said that even if it's less than 10 people, one person could read and fulfill the obligation of others. Similar to what the Mishna Berura said, many great Poskim, right, that preferably you should worry about what the Shulchan Aruch said, and therefore, ve'ein lo hoitzi acherim yedei choivosonim yoidim likroy la'atzma. You cannot fulfill the obligation of someone else by reading the Megillah if they know how to read it on their own. Key part, elim kin, unless yesham asar nashim. There need to be 10 people. So to summarize the last 20 minutes of learning that we just did, end of the day, this is how you sum it up. This is what you put on your 40-second short, which get hundreds of views for some reason, more than the long ones. You say, end of the day, if you don't have 10 people, you don't read the Megillah for everyone else. Why? A few reasons. One is the inside of the Chachmas Shelomo. The Magen Avraham already says, Megillah is similar to shemoneh esray. It's similar to hallel. You need 10 to fulfill the obligation of someone else. That's a whole summary. You don't want all the details. You don't want all the amelus b'Torah, the Ian b'Torah, the proper way of learning Torah. You just want the conclusion. You want to get it spoon-fed. That's the spoon. That's the food getting fed right into your mouth, but you got to chew it yourself. Questions, comments? Straightforward.
But
Yeah.
when you say that they know how to read it, that means they have to know how to read the Megillah with the trumpet and a cloth?
Excellent question. Last night, Thursday night, there's a lot of programs in the shul where I learn it. It's actually very funny. It starts 7:00, the younger kids, then they get older, and then all the fathers come and everything. It's very cute. I'm there the whole time, from 7 to 10:00. So we were handling this, and l'chayra, if you're gonna have a guy up there who knows how to read, but he's gonna be corrected every 10 words because he's mispronouncing it, you know, shave al tasei adif, right? Better not to do it. David, you're on mute. If you want to say something, you got to take the mute off.
No.
You don't want to say anything? So you got to make that cheshbon. Any other questions, comments? Okay, moving right along to Sif Gimel and Dalid. My wife said that this should not be put up on a recording. I said, Raba. Gimel. Androganes. Motzei mino veloy she'ena mino. An androganes, which the Mishna Berura over here in Sivkot Test says, yesh lo zachrus v'nachvus, has both the male and the female reproductive organ. These are rare cases, but they do happen. So he could read Megillah for another androganes or for someone who is not an androganes. Mishna Berura and Yud Aleph comments. Yud, he could fulfill the obligation, read Megillah for another androganes. Te'im yesh zachar, gam ze zachar. If an androganes is considered a male, so then the other androganes is also a male, and he could do it. V'im zon nekeva, gam zon nekeva. And if the androganes has the halachic status of a female, so then the person who's reading the Megillah for is also a female. V'im nispor dehu bria b'fnei atzman, if it's considered an independent creation, meaning he's somewhere in between, gam hasheni bria b'fnei atzmahu, also the second person has the same status. However, v'lo yashena mino, he cannot read Megillah for someone who is not an androgynous. The shemas and nekeva hasheni uzacher. Maybe he's a female, another person is a male. And you should reference the video that we put up on Sif Beis, the halachas of, is a female allowed to read Megillah for a male? Not so simple that she's not allowed to. Surprise, surprise, after you properly research the subject for 6 hours. See those videos for more details. And even according to the opinion who holds, here it is, that women have the ability halachically to read the Megillah and to fulfill the obligation of men, the androgynous would be halachically considered worse. To be inon motzei esacherim yenikar imhu isha isha. Because the person who is reading the Megillah, it has to be recognizable if he is a male or a female. Back in the Shulchan Aruch, a tumtum. What is a tumtum? A tumtum is someone that doesn't have any of the reproductive organs. Umi shechatzia eved, someone who is half of a slave. How could you be a chatzia eved? Simple. You have a partnership. Your partner frees the slave, but you didn't free him yet. He's a half slave. Afilu mino eina motzei. Even his own type, another half slave, he cannot read the Megillah for. Mishna Berura writes, Yud Beis Tumtum, the Shema Zezachar v'zenekeva. Because maybe the Tumtum has a halachic status of a male, and the person, and maybe a female. We don't know. Masha'inkin androganes kulam shavim benina. So that's why a Tumtum cannot even read the Megillah for another Tumtum, because maybe one of the Tumtums has the status of a female, and the other a male, or vice versa. You got issues. Unlike the androganes. And similarly, someone who's a half slave, if you take the half of him that's considered a slave, so now a slave can't read the Megillah for a free person. So the other person who's free cannot fulfill his obligation. The Rama adds a tremendous stringency and insight. Some say that a slave cannot even read the Megillah for himself. He needs to hear from others. I'm going to throw out a question. I hope everyone remembers the answer from yesterday. What is the bottom line halacha? Could a woman read Megillah for herself?
Yeah, but B'diavad.
Who said that she can't? Who remembers? The Magen Avraham. The Mishna Berura quoted the Magen Avraham. What was the source of the Magen Avraham? The source was a Zohar Chadash, the Midrash Ha'ne'elam in Rus. Sharat Zion quoted it in this long Sivkot and Tazayin. At the end of the day, she could read with a woman for himself. So some of the Bachim last night were telling me, my Rebbe said that she can't even read for herself. No offense, either you heard him wrong or he's just wrong. Because the Mishna Berura clearly quoted the Chai Adam, who said she could read it for himself. That's another discussion. Next Mishna Berura, Yud Gimel. Some say even himself. And this is not referring to the Tumtum, it's referring to the half slave and half free person. Because he can't, the slavery part of him cannot fulfill the free part of him, cannot cover the free part of him. This is only according to the opinion holds that women cannot read Megillah for men, and a slave would be similar to women in this regard. Sif Dalet. Someone who reads who hears the Megillah from someone who made a vow, and the vow was, I am not going to derive any pleasure from that person. Could you fulfill your obligation of Megillah from the person who's reading it? You vowed that you're not going to get pleasure from him? Yes. Why? The mitzvos lav lahenois nitnu v'loy mikre hana. Because the Gemara in Maseches Rosh Hashanah teaches also on Kaf Ches Amud Aleph that mitzvahs were not given primarily that we get pleasure from them. They're not pleasurable. The primary purpose of them, even if we don't enjoy a mitzvah and we have to do it, we have to do it. Sometimes they are pleasurable. But the primary purpose was not given for our pleasure, rather like Rashi writes over there, Elo lihiyois ol al sovoreim, that it should be a yoke on our neck. And therefore, it's not considered pleasure when we listen to the person who we vowed that we are not going to derive any benefit from, and we listen to that person read the Megillah because mitzvah salav l'henois nitnu. Look over there, it applies over here. Amirza Hashem, next session, we will resume with the final sif of this simon. And then, just want to show you how short it is on the page of the Mishna Berura. The final sif is sif vav. All right? It's a relatively short sif. We're going to finish it in one setting. That's 100%. And then afterwards, we're going to have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays a fast. We're going to tackle in depth the subjects, the very important, and I would argue the most complex area of all of Hilchos Purim, the halachas of, could a person read from the Megillah in one location, and someone watches the Megillah reading on Zoom, Skype is no longer apparently, on Zoom, another type of platform, Google Meets, a phone. What's the story? Does that work or not? And additionally, what is the story if someone makes a bracha on Zoom or on a phone call and you answer Siyam Hashas live stream, they broadcast it? Do you answer Amen Yehei Shmei Raba? These are among the biggest shilas that come up. The pesukim also we're going to tangent into as well. What about on Shabbos? What is the status of microphones? Muksa, hearing aids. Could someone wear a hearing aid on Shabbos listening to the Megillah with the hearing aid? Someone else, another shaila, which a Rav got me and texted, shared the shaila, was there's something in English called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this properly, but a cochlear implant, cochlear implant. What's it called?
I have a nephew that has a cochlear implant.
Cochlear implant.
Yeah.
Cochlear.
What's the story? If you have that, could you read the Megillah for others? Because we learned a few sessions ago that a cheresh hamedaber ve'ena shameya can't read the Megillah. The Bach said b'diavad, yes. Okay, fine. We're going to have to learn about that as well.